Let's get to the story number three. Story number three. Whew. I could sometimes I talk and I make myself feel good. Woo! Story number three. Are there flaws in capitalism? Financial Challenge Week 6. In the Financial Challenge, I've actually taken it upon myself to be at the bottom of the food chain. I have nothing left. All I have is this radio show and a prayer. I've got my little bitty business, but I've reached the bottom of the food chain, and I have learned a lot about this financial challenge. And the fact is that money plays a big influence in everyday America's life. I've seen people get evicted. Even myself, I've seen eviction notices on my door. I've talked to people who are proud representatives who help out veterans, and I've talked to, but I'm telling you, if you don't have credit and you don't have money, donation ain't gonna help you, folks. And that's what I found out. I've navigated. I've just about what I say, exhausted every avenue to see how far the mighty dollar could go. But the thing is in capitalism, there is a thing is that if you don't have money, you can't get into certain places. You can't get property. You get notices on your door. You get late payments. So I've took it upon myself to see what it's like, and I'm telling you, folks, it is bad. You can't get good health care. You can't do the normal things that people who have money can do. You find yourself taking out more credit cards that you can bear to kind of make ends meet. And you could call around to any, I think it's like, you call organizations and you say, I'm at the bottom, what can you do? And they will give you a nice little pat on the back, and they will tell you that without a good credit score, you can't get anything. So that's what I'm learning in this financial challenge. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is how does this affect the rules of the game in capitalism? How do you help people with nothing? So it's almost like saying, does a veteran's net worth increase because he's a veteran? Or do you tell? I mean, it's amazing how this system is structured. So it's basically saying that in the old school days, that the people who could not contribute the most would be placed on the front lines. But if you could contribute brain power, you were sitting in the higher end office. So this is becoming a big front news story. Is what do you do to the people who are on the front lines, the people who are battling, who are fighting, and they're losing arms and losing legs? What do you do when they can no longer work? They can no longer contribute to society. I mean, do you give them? So I've seen this, and I see how people become homeless. I see how they become unhealthy, how they can't eat. And the fact is that it all weighs on who has the most money in capitalism. And you see this happening in even in structures where you see candidates talking about how we need to take more from the rich and give more to the poor. Folks, this debate has been going on throughout all mankind. There's a candidate, Bernie Sanders, and this candidate is, I listened to some of his speeches and some of the way he talks. A very shift changing kind of guy. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's a millionaire, who's touted communism, and he's changing his speech a little bit about how he's going to be able to restructure the United States to be more accepting for everybody. And I mean, it's very interesting to how he's hammering down on the wealthy, but he's wealthy himself. So it's very interesting. It really brings to light about that. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about a rich man and a poor man, and it talks about how Christ would tell the rich man how it would be hard for you to leave everything to come to me. But we're seeing it happening amongst men and amongst how manhood is structured, and most men know they need money to feed their families. So when we talk about is there flaws in capitalism, I think to be more realist, to be basically tell the truth. If you call somebody and you say, "Can you lend me a helping hand?" If you can't do it, just tell them the truth. I think because it may heal the wounds. But right now, there's not a lot of sympathy sticks going around because of the fact that there's a reality that's setting in, and the fact is, if you can't pay up, I mean, I have bills that I got to pay. That's why I say I'm living on a hope and a prayer here by taking this risk to see what it's like to have nothing, and it really sucks. I'm telling you right now. But I've still been able to manage to come in here. But that's why every contribution that I get goes back into the community, because I see what it's like. You cannot. They're coming from a poor to a middle class, and to understanding how the rich and how this game of being a philanthropist, and how donating and stuff works is very. I've even talked to some poor veterans, poor people, and they are upset. They're talking about if they're talking about how the food companies, how they're getting food, and they're saying the soup kitchens, and they're saying if people wouldn't eat that themselves, why are they feeding it to us? So there's a big battle that's going on when you talk about the poor. But I've actually gone out and talked to some of my friends, some of the people who I've come across in life, people who have lived in studios. It's amazing. There's even a story that surfaced about an Alabama sheriff who was arrested on charges of scamming a food bank, and even his own church, under an old law that allowed state sheriffs to profit off of feeding prisoners. They're saying that more millennials are dying due to overdoses and suicides because they can't keep up with capitalism. It's almost like, and the people who have a lot of wealth, some of them don't understand what it's like to be poor, so they're pretty much telling everybody to toughen up. But the reality is, if you don't have a financial income, some means of income, I don't care if it's coming from the government or some way to stay afloat, it can be rough. And I'm telling you, when you're at the bottom of the food chain, I see what it's like, and I've took it upon myself, and it is tough. I mean, I've seen it. I'm seeing it day to day. The people who you're around, they try to help you. They don't have a lot, so you have to jump ship a lot. You have to find out where you're going to eat, where you're going to wash your clothes, and you don't know. You gotta find things to keep you entertained. You gotta find something to do. You got a lot of dirt around you. It's unbelievable how people can live in these conditions, especially in a wealthy country. And they're talking about how the trade wars may be taking an enormous bite out of company profits, according to some reports. So they're talking about how even the talk of money, of demanding money in other countries who don't have a lot of money, or who may have a different system of governing, how that is changing things. They're also talking about how financial insecurity is plaguing a lot of Americans who live with disabilities. You know, I talked about this a little bit ago, how veterans and a lot of people who have disabilities, they don't have a way to survive because they don't have a 9 to 5. And that's why it's important when you talk about, is there a flaw in capitalism, when you look at the Carnegie organization and how he was able to change policy to where you could have philanthropy, and you see all this people donating and contributing. They say, I guess when you have money, it's good to be wise and rich. I don't think that being wealthy is the enemy, or being a rich person is a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with obtaining wealth, but I think the principles and moral understanding when it comes to having having an understanding what to do with your finances, I think that's very important. And I'm starting to, I think that the rules of when you look at how when they talk about like the Bible and the New Testament, how sometimes people think that the rich are the enemy. I think a lot of that culture is starting to change. I think people are trying to wake people up to understand that money. When you have money, you have to be responsible, and you have to understand what to do with it. Like even in Bezos' case, the founder of Amazon, you see how much money he's touting around, and he's able to afford a divorce. Some poor people can't afford to be divorced; they have to live within the means. And I don't think this even the justice system is structured around helping other poor. So there's a big gap. I mean, these people may obtain a lot of wealth, they may have a lot of money, they may have put a lot of work into it, but there's a lot of people working very hard, they still don't achieve maximum wealth. So you see this talk in America is starting to circulate, and it's getting to people to understand that I think it comes more from your heart rather than what you're doing in this life. And money itself may just come, but when you see the gap between rich and poor, this story number 3 may gain some steam because it's been staying alive. There was a story about the Justice Department, how they're citing executive privilege in regards to even with the citizenships question. So when you talk about how these policies, when you talk about citizenship questions, immigration, and poor and wealthy, these are people that are on totally different wavelengths. There's even a story that surfaced about how senior citizens were sold risk-free retirement with reverse mortgages, and now they're facing a lot of foreclosures because of how they were duped into believing that their risk-free retirement would give them a reverse mortgage. So it's even affecting the housing market. They're talking about how flipping homes has hit a 9-year high, but this could be trouble. This could be trouble for the real estate market. So when you talk about finances and money, I'm telling you, in the financial challenge that I've decided to take, I've learned so much about my finances. I've learned about interest rates. So it's keeping me educated. There was even a story about how an 81-year-old, he felt that his Social Security payments were too small, so he robbed a bank in hopes that he would return to prison. So people are becoming so desperate that they start to do drastic things, and this is all because of the way that they think about capitalism and money. There was a McDonald's worker. Now this is cheap food. He was sprayed with a fire extinguisher after an argument over a cheeseburger. Now let me remind you, a cheeseburger is cheap. Is it worth fighting for? So there's a lot of stories that are surfacing that are showing that there's a gap of understanding with people who have and people who don't have a lot of money. And they're talking about how Trump wants to limit aid for low income Americans. So that when you hear these candidates, as we get closer and closer to 2020, they're going to tout this out, that they can increase people's wealth and get money into people's pockets. But the thing is where will that money come from? And the question that remains in each of these candidates' mind when they talk about socialism and capitalism is, are there flaws in capitalism? And this is news that's circulating, and you heard it here first. There's a lot of talk circulating about this system that we live in. They're even talking about how other economies, how they're structured, and they're looking at the downfall of countries like Venezuela and socialism, how you get dictators into a country, and they're wondering how capitalism and a representative democracy, which we live in, can hold up. This is big talk. So if you want to, this is big talk. And story number 3 is probably going to gain some steam because there's a lot of poor people who need money, and they don't have a way to get it. They've been working 9-to-5 jobs, and they don't feel like they're getting it. They don't feel like they have enough money to be able to afford the interest rates or even just the cost of living in America. So that's story number 3. If you want to contribute, you're the Mediator with me, Brian West, where it's my supreme duty every week give you the top 8 headlines developing news story. We're past the halfway point, so I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. So if you want to contribute, all you have to do is visit www.method8inc.com, method8.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. Or you can just sponsor the program.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.